Hey everybody, it's Grandmaster Ben Finegold here again with Kid Chess. And I wanted to show you a position from a game, not the whole game, but when the game sort of got exciting. So this is a middle game. Black was a famous world champion, Vasily Smyslov. And actually, Smyslov was actually at my first wedding. So there you go. He was world champion, I believe, in 1957. And he was actually a candidate for the world championship when he was 63 years old, which is unheard of nowadays. He played actually Garry Kasparov, which many consider the greatest player ever, in a candidates match at the time to see who would play Karpov for the world championship. This was about 35 years ago. And so this is a game. Smyslov was black. You can see both sides have castled, and they have all their minor pieces out. It's black to move. The problem with white's position is white has a lot of pieces that are nowhere near his king. And conversely, black's pieces are sort of pointing towards white's king. So we see a really nice attack is going to happen here. All right, so there's something called a clearance sacrifice, which is a very advanced concept, but this is actually much better. This is a clearance with no sacrifice. You don't have to give anything away. And that's when you want to move one of your pieces to a square, but that square is occupied by another one of your pieces. You can't take your own piece. Chess would be a much different game if you could capture your own piece. You obviously wouldn't do it most of the time, but actually there are times when you would. So watch what black does here. Plays knight takes e5, and the reason he plays that move is he frees the c6 square for his queen. Okay, and then he's got a battery here. So after white recaptures, obviously, instead of saving his knight, black threatens checkmate with queen c6. Notice the queen and the bishop make a battery, so queen takes g2 is mate. Well, you don't want to get checkmated, so white played actually the losing move, although I think it's the most obvious move. It just turns out that it doesn't work because of Smyslov's brilliance. And Smyslov wasn't known as a brilliant attacking player. He was known as a more positional player who would beat you in a long game. But actually, anybody who's the world champion, they can do everything. Okay, so the best move is actually to block the queen by moving the pawn up, so the queen can't jump over the pawn. But white defended g2 with bishop f1, protecting the pawn. Again, black's knight is still attacked. This is a mistake you might make at home or in school, is you have a piece attacked, but you do something else, and then after you've done something else, your piece is still attacked, and you're like, oh, I forgot about that. So here, even though black's knight is attacked, black doesn't have to move it away. He can attack white's queen, and he did. Okay, so now his rook's on the nice open line. Okay, and white made another mistake in this position. He played queen b3. And the reason it's a mistake is he's, building up all his pieces on the queen side. What about his king? Come on, you need something to defend your king. I mean, black's got a lot going on over here. So black played knight g4, saving his knight and putting more pieces at the white king. I don't think white's too happy about all these pieces over here now. And obviously, black's threatening to take this pawn on h2 either with the bishop or with the knight, probably with the bishop. And so white played h3, saving his pawn and attacking the knight. And this move that black played here is so brilliant that most grandmasters wouldn't find it. If this was a tournament game and a grandmaster was playing black, I actually wouldn't expect him to find it. Now, if you're doing puzzles, which you should be doing, and I said, hey, black has a winning move here, then a grandmaster would probably find it. But when you're playing a real game against somebody, nobody whispers in your ear, hey, you have a winning move. That's not allowed. Okay, now, this is an amazing move because black moves to a square that it looks like you can't move to because it's protected. But this is actually one of my favorite chess tactic themes, overworked. It's when your piece is doing too much. And the piece that's overworked here is the bishop. The bishop is stopping checkmate. If that bishop was off the board, black would play checkmate. Well, that means the bishop can't move. The bishop can't move here. The bishop can't move here. If it does, black plays checkmate. And because of that, black has this amazing move, rook to d3. Okay, obviously, if you take it, it's checkmate. That's the obvious variation. And now we're attacking the queen. And the other obvious move for white, which is actually hard to figure out why it's wrong, is just take with the queen. What's wrong with that? Well, then Smyslov would play check, and white only has one legal move. And then he would do this forking the king and queen. What's funny is, after king takes, there's another fork. Man, fork every move. And we still can't take the knight because of checkmate. And not only is there a fork, but now the queen is attacking this knight also. So there's basically all of white's pieces are attacked. That's not good. Okay, and white lost his queen. So the rook on d3 can't be captured. Now, on the other hand, this queen is defending this knight, and, got to move the queen somewhere, or we have to block the rook. Now, the reason black played rook d3, not only to attack the queen, was to do another tactic, okay? And this is called removing the defender, or a decoy, or a deflection, and it's what black does the next move, okay? Not only can this bishop not move, this pawn also can't move. If the pawn goes here, the only place it can move, then black plays queen h1 checkmate. And you might say, well, white doesn't want to go there. Well, white does want to protect his pawn, otherwise black can take this pawn for free. You know what? Black can take that pawn for free, because that pawn can't move because of queen h1 mate. So not only am I threatening the queen, I'm also threatening the h-pawn. That's a fork. And if my rook gets to h3 and you don't take my rook, your white king's going to be in a lot of trouble. So white tried to trade queens. Queen takes b6. White was hoping black takes the queen, and white takes the queen. Yay! With the queens off the board, probably don't get mated. And just like in a lot of other videos I make, there's something more important than the queen. It's the king, checkmate. Checkmate's better than taking a queen, so black continued on with his rook takes h3 move. Now this is funny. The queen on b6 is defending the pawn on f2. So if white tries to trade queens, queen takes queen, black doesn't trade queens, black checkmates white. Black plays bishop h2 check, and then knight takes f2 checkmate. The reason it's checkmate, the queen on b6 isn't on b6 anymore. So you can't move your queen off of the f2 pawn. Okay, not only can you not take the queen, but you can't take the rook because of the aforementioned checkmate. Everything's checkmate. Now, in one of the variations I showed you, knight takes f2 is mate, so white played bishop to d4, defending the pawn on f2. All right. Black played bishop h2 check, white played the only legal move, and black played discovered check. Bishop takes e5 check. And you can try to take the rook, but the computer won't let you because that pawn is pinned. That's a discovered check. Now here, white gave up. And the reason he gave up was he has to go here, we check again, and now we discovered check here. Uh-oh, that's check, and it attacks the queen. It attacks the king and the queen. If you're going to attack two pieces, and I recommend it, attack the king and the queen. That's the two best. Okay, and now white's going to lose his queen and probably get checkmated too. So white gave up because all of black's pieces are attacking. Man, that's a lot of attack over there. White's pieces over here on the queen side hanging out. Not good defensive as king. A great attacking game from Vasily Smyslov, who wasn't known as an attacking player, but if you give him an attack, he'll take it. And just like Paul Morphy, my favorite player, Smyslov used all of his pieces to attack. If you're going to attack your opponent, the more pieces you have, the better chance you're successful. So another great game from another world champion. As usual, we never heard of the guy he beat. I guess if people lose all their games, we never heard of them. But when guys have brilliant checkmates, then they become famous and world champions. This is Grandmaster Ben Finegold for Kid Chess. I hope you enjoyed that video as much as me. Bye, everybody.